see each one of you here this morning. Let's start by turning in our hymnals to number 402, or watching on the screen, The Solid Rock. I'll invite you to stand with me if you're able as we sing the first three verses together. 402. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you for your faithfulness to us. Father, we thank you that you are our hope, that we can trust in you. You never fail us, you never leave us, you never forsake us. You're always there waiting for us to look to you and let you lead in our lives. Thank you for your goodness to us. Thank you for a morning that we can come out and fellowship together in your house. Thank you for your word that you've given to us. As we're here, we pray that you would teach us from your word, draw us together as a body of believers, and help us to rejoice in all that you have done for us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. You may be seated, except for Dennis and Deb's class and their verse. Very much. Al and Sally.
Psalm 50:15. And call upon me in the day of trouble. I will deliver you, and you shall glorify me. Psalm 50:15.
Yes. Annie, your class. Very good, thank you. Teens?
2 Peter 1:20 and 21. No prophecy of Scripture comes from someone's own interpretation, for no prophecy was ever produced by the will of man, but men spoke from God as they were carried along by the Holy Spirit. 2 Peter 1:20 and 21.
All right, thank you. Thankful for those scriptures, aren't we? How about the adults? Daniel 3:17 and 18. Our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us out of your hand, O King. But if not, be it known to you that we will serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. Daniel 3:17 and 18. I ask you to remain standing and the others to join us in standing as we sing that last verse of 400 to the solid rock as we're dismissed to our classes also. When he shall come with trumpet sound, oh, may I then in him be found, dressed in his righteousness alone, faultless to stand before the throne. On Christ the solid rock I stand, all other ground is sinking sand. Thank you. You may be seated.
Anybody need a homework handout from last week? Well, looky there. Larry, come here. Your wife wants one of these. And would you look for other hands that are up? Please, thank you. You aren't in trouble yet. You may be in trouble before the morning's over, I'm not sure. Well, it's the nature of the beast, isn't it? So this is last week's homework. Donna needed one. Nancy needs one. Bill needs one. When he's done with that, I'll ask you if you need a verse card, but I'll let him finish that first so you don't have to wonder what you're raising your hand for. Carolyn would like one. Marilyn, are you warm? So am I. How about verse card for September? There's only 1 week left. Anybody need one? Want me to give one to Ron too? He reads it for you. Okay, you are dismissed. Thank you. Not out the door, just to your seat. Let's practice a little bit with our memory verse. We only have 1 week left. We're starting to get it. So repeat after me. Our God whom we serve is able to deliver us out of your hand, O King. Can we do that much all at once? Let's say it with me. Our God whom we serve is able to deliver us out of your hand, O King. See how easy this is? But if not, be it known to you that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. Can we do the last half together? Here we go, but. But if not, be it known to you that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. All you do is put those two pieces together and say Daniel 3:17 and 18, you're done. It's not that hard, is it? Why is it so hard for us to memorize anything? Are we getting older? That's my experience, at least. How about a brief discussion of Jason and Laura's consideration of an ultimatum? Mr. Clinton wanted to talk about this, I'm sure. So here's the story. It was in last week's homework. Jason and Laura recently learned the oldest of their 5 children, 17-year-old Hannah, is pregnant. She got involved with a boy from school. Jason and Laura believe Hannah should give her baby up for adoption, but Hannah is determined to keep the child. Jason believes he and Laura should tell Hannah that if she keeps the baby, she'll have to do so on her own. But Laura believes that an ultimatum would be a mistake, driving their daughter away from them and their potential influence on her and the grandchild. The question at the bottom of that is, how could Daniel 2:20 through 23 encourage them? That passage reads like this. Daniel answered and said, "Blessed be the name of God forever and ever, to whom belong wisdom and might. He changes times and seasons. He removes kings and sets up kings. He gives wisdom to the wise and knowledge to those who have understanding. He reveals deep and hidden things. He knows what is in the darkness, and the light dwells with him. To you, O God of my fathers, I give thanks and praise, for you have given me wisdom and might, and have now made known to me what we asked for you've made known to us the king's matter. All right. The question is, what should Jason and Laura do? And does the passage Brian taught last week help us? John? Pray for wisdom and understanding. When you don't know what to do, pray about it. Good move.
And then take a nap.
Okay. That's probably good counsel. And then take a nap. Anybody else? You want to jump in here? What should Jason and Laura do? Charlene? Yeah, you've been there and done that. Okay. No. Right. Right. Yeah. Jason's embarrassed. Jason's embarrassed because his daughter has brought shame to the family. Laura's thinking maybe a little more compassionately than Jason is. But this baby, the baby who will be born, is a wonderful thing. Life is a blessing. And sooner or later, you got to get over the circumstances surrounding the conception of that child. That doesn't mean that the daughter's life isn't going to be hard. That's the nature of the consequences of sin. Yes, can be both. Anybody else you want to chime in? Go ahead, Helen. No. Yeah, but let me just step into the shoes of this unpleasant chap, Jason. Jason says, if I somehow affirm her, the daughter, raising the child, then I'm somehow condoning her behavior. Tell me that's stupid. Thank you. I needed to hear that. And some of you men perhaps have been tempted to think that way, because after all, we want to protect the integrity of the institution of marriage, and how dare she go out and run around with this dude. Mary, go ahead. I think that was a compliment. How many of you thought that was a compliment? Yes, thank you. Go ahead. They should. They should. Yeah, that's what we're doing today. We're seeking counsel for Jason and, what was her name, Laura? I don't remember his name. We're seeking counsel for them from you. Man, those are tough choices, because if you say, if you choose to raise this child, you're no daughter of ours anymore. Wow, that seems unhelpful. Phyllis? Yeah? Right. Yes. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, her dad and mom. Yeah, and I'm not an anti-adoption guy. That's not what I'm about. I'm not saying that the child shouldn't adopt the baby out. Okay, that's fine. There are couples starving for children. At the same time, I don't like the dad's attitude. Larry? Yeah, younger than that. Yeah, and in previous generations, I don't mean like my parents' generation, but in previous generations, in most cultures, 17-year-olds were raising families. Did. Right. Yeah. Yeah? Always, yes. Yeah, be selective about whose counsel you listen to. Yeah, don't be careful that what you're hearing is biblical counsel. We had a conversation about that on a Wednesday night here not too many weeks ago. John, again?
Can we congratulate the young lady
On what?
for making the decision
Not to abort? Sure. We can speak confidently and with great enthusiasm about what a what a blessing here. And we can put our arms around her and say, listen, we care about you, we're concerned about you, and I'm a sinner just like you're a sinner, and Christ died on the cross for your sin and for mine. And so you are not somehow a pariah in this community. You are what I am. Anything else? Go ahead, Bev. Yeah. Yeah. That he did. It should be. You know, 1 John 1:8 says, if you say we have no sin, we're lying, we're claiming what's not true. But then verse 9 that follows that, but if we confess our sin, he is faithful and just to forgive our sin and cleanse us from all unrighteousness. Yeah, here we stand as forgiven sinners. Let's just be careful that we don't somehow portray ourselves as something else. Yeah, rejoice in the forgiveness of sin. Charlene again. Yeah. Well, those of you that have adopted children, I don't know if your kids have felt like they were missing a piece because they didn't know about their biological parents and grandparents. I don't. Yours did. Yeah, but adoption's a beautiful thing. It's what God did to us, right? We've been adopted as sons, so yeah, I can see that. All right. Well, that was fun. This quarter, those of you who are teaching this quarter, there are case studies on the CD. There haven't always been, not every quarter there are. And you can choose to do whatever you want with them. If you're going to include a case study for discussion, it ought to be the case study that refers to last week's material, right? That's the way I would like you to do it. All right, here we go. Do you enjoy studying history? Some of you despise history. You hate history. You don't enjoy it at all. I've become a fan of history. I say to people, I am historically ignorant. By that I mean I don't know history. Apparently, my 13 years at Delton, I don't know, either I wasn't paying attention or they weren't teaching me much. So I find history fascinating. And when I'm studying it, I do so not because I need to know it. And that makes it even more fun. There's no test. I'm not going to have to report to you what I learned. So I'm currently reading Thomas S. Kidd's biography of Benjamin Franklin. And it focuses on his religious life. And the religious life of Benjamin Franklin is all over the place. He is everything from an almost atheistic skeptic to a guy who chases after really weird cultish things. He grew up in a home of Puritan parents with strong Calvinistic leanings. And yet, Franklin despises Calvinism. He seems to really enjoy morality just for morality's sake. You should be a good person. Why should I be a good person? Because that's what people are supposed to do. There's no theological underpinning behind it. Anyways, Kidd writes well, and I've been enjoying that biography of Franklin. Not because I need to tell you about Benjamin Franklin, not because I need to know this for a future quiz or test. It just is sort of fun. Are some of you that enjoy history? That's the fun part of it for me. And sometimes if you and I have read the same book, we can talk about it a little bit, but I don't have to know the details. I try to always have one book in my box that I don't need a highlighter for. And right now, Kid is that. I mean, it's my book. I could highlight it if I wanted to, but that's not why I'm not reading it that way. So I enjoy that. Favorite history writers, who do you enjoy reading? Anybody? How about David McCullough? Yeah, he died this year. And so I've read lots of stuff that he's written. I think the first one I read was John Adams. I ended up reading The Path Between the Seas and the story of the Johnstown flood and 1776. There's lots of stuff. Annie heard that he died this spring or early summer. And next thing you know, every day it seems like from Amazon, there's another box of books coming. So she apparently is stocking up on David McCullough books for her school students, which is great. Anybody else you found writers you really enjoy reading? History writers. Nobody's gonna admit. Go ahead, Richard. Yeah. The way the life used to be. Yeah. It's a congregating place. Nice. No matter who you enjoy reading for history, how good are they at forecasting what's going to happen, say, over the next 35 centuries? I can't predict what's going to happen in the next 35 minutes. That's about how long we have left, let alone 35 centuries. That's a pretty heavy lift. Well, we're going to see today the dream. Brian began to talk sort of about this last week. Nebuchadnezzar had a dream. And you'll remember that this dream bothered him. He was quite perplexed by it. And so he calls together all of his wise guys, right? Nebuchadnezzar does, all of the magicians and the Chaldeans and the soothsayers, the guys who were supposed to have access to information. He calls them all together and says to them, I want you to tell me what my dream means. And what did they reply? Tell us the dream and we'll tell you what it means. He says to them, I got your number. You guys have got a racket going here. This is how you work. I tell you my dream. You tell me what it means. I have no confidence that you have any idea what that dream meant. You're making stuff up. So in order to test you, I'm not going to tell you the dream. Because after all, if you have access to the gods, then you can tell me the dream itself, not just the meaning of the dream. They say to him, no way, we can't do that. Nobody can do that. He said, then off with your heads, right? You're all going to die. Well, that group included Daniel, our friend Daniel. And so when Daniel hears about that, he goes to his friends, Hananiah, Azariah, and Mishael, and he says to them, we must pray. We must pray for wisdom. We must seek God so that he might reveal to us this dream and its interpretation. Otherwise, we're dead too. At the end of that story last week, in the tail end of that passage, it all is going to work out well. We know this. But what we didn't get to last week on purpose is what the dream was all about. So let's see if we can spend the next 30 minutes thinking about what this dream is all about. This image that Nebuchadnezzar saw in his dream. Daniel begins in verse 31. This is Daniel chapter 2, Daniel chapter 2, verse 31. Daniel begins to express to the king what it is that the king saw. Daniel 2:31. You saw, O king, and behold a great image. Have we seen an image already in Daniel? Are we going to see an image in Daniel? An image of a man. Really tall, really shiny. Chapter 3, we'll get to it next week. You saw, O king, verse 31 of chapter 2, behold, a great image. This image, mighty and of exceeding brightness, stood before you. Its appearance was frightening. The head of this image was of fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, its middle and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of clay. Daniel immediately had Nebuchadnezzar's attention, his full attention. Nebuchadnezzar says, this guy is different. He's not whining. He's not making excuses for why he can't deliver the content of the dream. This guy's got it. He got this somewhere. A chill runs up and down Nebuchadnezzar's spine. What'd you notice about the materials in this image as you work your way, say, from top to bottom? Pattern? Huh, Mike? They're all different. Very good. Ken? Increasingly less valuable. Gold, silver, bronze, iron, clay iron. Bill? Increasing strength, at least down to the legs. The feet become this mixture of iron and clay. That becomes brittle, I suppose. But increasing strength. Many of you are wearing, those of you who haven't gone to a silicone wedding band, many of you are wearing a gold wedding band. That gold has been alloyed with something else. Why? Because gold by itself is very, very soft, very malleable, right? So if you squeeze your ring, it pinches down on your finger. But gold by itself is, well, it's soft. It's not, doesn't have strength, but it's beautiful, and it's also very resistant to corrosion. And then silver, and then bronze, and then iron. Increasing strength, decreasing value. And that sounds like great observations just in terms of that general pattern. Anything else? All right, so we have this image described in verses 31, 2, and 3, but this image is now going to be destroyed. Look at verse 34. As you looked, he says to Nebuchadnezzar, a stone was cut out by no human hand. It struck the image on its feet of iron and clay and broke them in pieces. Then, going back up, the iron, the clay, the bronze, the silver, the gold, all together were broken in pieces, became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors, and the wind carried them away, so that not a trace of them could be found. But the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. This was the dream. And Nebuchadnezzar says, yep, that was my dream. He wants to know what it means, but now he knows that Daniel knows what he dreamed. I'm amazed he remembers his dream. I occasionally have dreams that seem remarkable in the moment. And if I want to tell Annie about them in the morning, I'm totally lost about that. It's amazing how fast an interesting dream drifts away from our memory, but Nebuchadnezzar has hung on to his. Is it significant that that stone there in verse 34 was cut out by no human hand? So what kind of a stone would be cut out by no human hand? Jesus, that's a good Sunday school answer. Yeah, a stone that has divine origin, not human origin. And we'll see as we begin to look at the meaning of the dream. It's interesting to me, this stone doesn't coexist with the image. You're driving around town, you see a bumper sticker on the back of some Subaru. I'm looking around to see if any, Marcia. You see, Marcia drives a Subaru. You see a bumper sticker on the back of a Subaru that says coexist. I don't quite know what that's supposed to mean. I don't think I like it. She's never seen them. She only sees them on F-150s. I don't know quite what that's supposed to mean, but I think it means I'm supposed to not raise a stink about things I don't agree with. I don't know. But this stone does not coexist with the image, right? Once the stone comes into the picture, the image is not just toppled, not just made into a heap, a jumble of pieces. It's totally removed from the picture, gone. So whatever we begin to think about the meaning of the image, its parts, and of the stone, recognize that the stone does not coexist with the image. It rather supplants it. How's Nebuchadnezzar feeling right now? Happy? Scared? Shaken to his core? I would think. Wouldn't you be? Because you've been used to, Nebuchadnezzar, you've been used to your wise men giving you interpretations of things. But you've become suspicious of them. You think they're playing a game with you for their own benefit. You put them to the test, and they prove to be absolutely worthless. And they're all on their way to the gallows. And then this guy comes in and knows stuff that creeps you out. You say, this is something. I don't know what this is. I don't know who you've been listening to, Daniel. But whoever it is, he knows stuff. So I would imagine by this point, Nebuchadnezzar is standing there shaking in his sandals. I'm happy to report that the next thing Daniel says is not, was I close? That's a good thing. Because he wasn't just guessing. He wasn't just doing his best to come up with what seems to be a reasonable approximation to something that the king might have dreamed. But instead, he goes on then to describe the dream. Verse 36, this was the dream. Now we will tell the king its interpretation. You, O king, verse 37, the King of kings, to whom the God of heaven has given the kingdom, the power, the might, and the glory, and into whose hands he has given, wherever they dwell, the children of man, the beasts of the field, and the birds of the heavens, making you rule over them. You are the head of gold. This is an easy question to answer. What does the head of gold represent? Babylon, as Daniel says it, more particularly Nebuchadnezzar, he says, you are the head of gold. Historians say things like this. It's not so much that Nebuchadnezzar existed as the head of Babylon, but that Babylon existed as the kingdom of Nebuchadnezzar. He apparently was a ruler who was absolutely in control of his kingdom. And Babylon will rule the world, but only for less than a century. Go ahead. He is. The most powerful man on the earth. Yeah. Yeah. It does. This is the same Nebuchadnezzar who 2 weeks ago Daniel. This is the same Daniel who 2 weeks ago says about him and his three friends, can we please have a different diet? Who, as a young man, a teenage boy, who has been raised by his parents back in Judah to respect the Torah, to have so much confidence in Yahweh that he can approach the king's emissary and say, I know the king ordered that we have this food, but can we please try it? Can we have a test here? And to have confidence that God will bring him through that. This is the same Daniel who not too long after that stands before the king and reports the meaning, not just the content, but now the meaning of the king's dream, and says to him, you are the head of gold. Richard? Yeah, he. Who's he? God has. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Nebuchadnezzar inherited this powerful position. Yeah. And yet Daniel says, God has placed you here. Yeah, the theme of our study in Daniel, our God reigns. He reigns over the kingdoms of men, doesn't he? All right, anything else you want to say about Nebuchadnezzar and Babylon? Remember, Babylon's the one they came into Judah 3 times in 606 and 597, 580, 5 or 6, and carried away the people of Judah. Daniel and his 3 friends were in that first bunch. They were smart young men. They were young men in whom there was much potential. So the Babylonians would gather up those first and eventually take a lot of other people to Babylon with them. And Daniel finds himself here in Babylon, able to represent the God of the universe before this powerful man. Did Nebuchadnezzar believe that he ruled the world because God put him there? Not initially. He may come to that conclusion. He probably won't stick to that conclusion, but he'll come to that conclusion through Daniel's message. Let me continue with the interpretation. I'm in verse 39. Another kingdom inferior to you shall arise after you. Wow. That's not quite so much detail as the head of gold, is it? This must be the chest and arms of silver, right? And all Daniel tells the king is another kingdom, verse 39, inferior to you, that's silver versus gold, Another kingdom inferior to you shall arise after you. Okay, this is a more difficult question. What do the chest and arms of silver represent? Huh? The Medes and Persians. The Medes and Persians, they would take over rule of the world from Babylon. Is this described for us in the book of Daniel? I haven't told you you can't read ahead in Daniel. Is this described for us in the book of Daniel when the Medes and Persians will come in and take over the Babylonian kingdom? Anybody know where? Chapter? You only got 12 guesses. 5. Thank you. Good man. Chapter 5. Remember, this is a writing on the wall episode? Yeah, to Belshazzar, and not Belteshazzar, that's Daniel, but Belshazzar, your time is up. And the Medes and Persians, exactly. The Medes and Persians will take over. I don't know whether to think about the fact that there are 2 arms with the chest means anything about Medes and Persians. You can feel free to read into that if you want to. I don't know much about that. Do you think Nebuchadnezzar thought that the Babylonian kingdom would ever fall? No, probably not. Just like you and I think America, best country ever. You and I think that America will never fall. Well, kingdoms rise, kingdoms fall. Sometimes I wonder if God doesn't judge America for her sin, how dare he look Sodom in the face, you know? I wonder sometimes that God is so patient with us. We continue to receive his blessing, and for that we'll be thankful. But Nebuchadnezzar would think that, the Babylonians are here for good. We have risen to power and we're never going to fall. Well, guess what, Almighty King? It's going to happen. Another kingdom, verse 39, inferior to you shall arise after you. I think you're right. I think it's the Medes and Persians. This all makes good sense to us historically because we look back on these events. We also have some more helpful information in Daniel, especially when we get to chapter 7. Chapter 7 will be a big help. It'll agree very nicely with what we see here in chapter 2. So hang in there. Don't stop coming to Sunday school. You'll see more as we make our way through this book. Thirdly, so we have this head of gold, chest and arms of silver. Verse 39, middle of the verse. Verse 39, middle. And yet a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over all the earth. Wow, again, not much information. What do the middle, the belly and thighs of bronze represent? Greece. How do you know that? Because you've been taught that somewhere in your life, haven't you? You don't know that from Daniel chapter 2, right? There's no way. You can get Babylon out of Daniel 2. You can't get the Medes and Persians out of Daniel 2. You can't get Greece out of Daniel 2. But you can, combining Daniel 2 with Daniel 7 and seeing the way this plays out in history, you can come to that conclusion. It's a good conclusion. Greece. Who is it that led Greece in conquering the known world? Alexander the Great, son of Philip of Macedon, right? So Alexander the Great made this sort of blitzkrieg across the known world and conquered everything that he could find, all the way from like Eastern Europe to India. A bigger kingdom than what the Babylonians controlled, a bigger kingdom than what the Medes and Persians controlled, the Greek kingdom. By the way, Alexander did this as a young man. How do I know he did it as a young man? Because he died at 33. 33. Anybody in here 33? You're all older than that. Well, I don't know that. How old are you, Enoch? 28. Oh, you're not older than that. You just look older than that. 33. Think back to when you were 33. Had you conquered the kingdom? Had you conquered the world? No, you'd hardly decided what you want to do for a living at 33. Go ahead, Rich. Again, everything that he could find, he conquered it. And got to the end of that and where do I go now? Just die. Die young. There's nothing enough to do? Tyler, I know better than that. There's always stuff to do. So Alexander at 33 dies. Is that the end of the Greek kingdom? No, the Greeks would rule the world. And they would continue to do that not just politically, but do that culturally, even beyond the extent of their political rule. We are the recipients of Greek thinking. Our New Testament is given to us in the Greek language. You know, that Greek system would not just quickly conquer the world, and it was quick. Like a leopard with wings, Daniel 7. This stuff will come back again. So don't feel like, oh, I don't know how you ever got that. Well, I got that because I paid attention to the rest of the book. Quickly conquered the world, but then that rule of Greece would continue for centuries. Anything else you want to say about Greece? I don't mean the musical. Go ahead, Rich. Yeah. Is it Galatians, is it 4:4? God who at the right time, I think I get the reference right. I'm misquoting this badly, so don't be too hard on me. God who at the right time did what was necessary to bring the gospel to the world. That's a terrible quotation, a paraphrase of that. But part of that was a common language. So this Greek language that would have extended all the way from Europe, all the way into Asia, this would be a language that would be the language of the populace, of the people. Well, the Romans are going to especially be eager to build roads. Go ahead, Rich. They did. Yes. Yes. Yeah, so the common man could experience what Solomon experienced, or whoever the professor was in Ecclesiastes. Maybe Solomon, maybe not. So the common man could experience the emptiness of trying things and realize how that leaves you high and dry. Yep. All right, Greece. Let me continue in verse 40. Legs of iron. Verse 40. And there shall be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron, because iron breaks to pieces and shatters all things. And like iron that crushes, it shall break and crush all these. What do the legs of iron represent? Rome. And you say that because you know this from history, because you have read Daniel chapter 7. You come to the conclusion that Rome is a strong kingdom. And Roman law, the Pax Romana, the Roman roads, all of that comes together with this Greek culture to produce a world where travel and communication are worldwide. Not fast like today. You can't just call up somebody in another part of the world and have a conversation on your phone. But it was a world where ideas could move easily. And again, Galatians 4:4, that's all part of what God was doing to prepare for the sending of his son, for the spread of the gospel in a world that was ripe and ready for that. Anything you want to say about Rome? Go ahead, Rich. I don't know that. Are you thinking because I said two arms means in Persians? I don't know that. I don't know. Legs of iron. Sorry. Again, as I admitted already, I am historically ignorant. So, okay. Eventually, that's true. Yeah, an Eastern and a Western Roman Empire. And the Roman church will have an Eastern and a Western half, right? That'll be perpetuated for centuries. Okay, I'll leave that alone. Feet and iron of clay. Amazingly, we have multiple verses about these feet and iron of clay. It seems strange to me. We have a lengthy description of the head of gold, half a verse on the chest and arms of silver, half a verse on the middle and thighs of bronze. Thank you. I'm thinking, what is this part of my body called? Thank you. Middle and thighs of bronze, and just a verse on the legs of iron. And then now we get multiple verses on this feet of iron mixed with clay. Look at verse 41. As you saw the feet and toes, partly of potter's clay, partly of iron, it shall be a divided kingdom, but some of the firmness of the iron shall be in it, just as you saw iron mixed with soft clay. And as the toes of the feet were partly iron and partly clay, so the kingdom shall be partly strong and partly brittle. As you saw the iron mixed with soft clay, so they will mix with one another in marriage, but they will not hold together, just as iron does not mix with clay. Wow, that is kind of mysterious to us. we follow historically Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome. We can follow that historically because it's been written about. But then you get to this feat of iron and clay, and you say to yourself, how does that show itself in history? You have a good answer for that? Huh? It doesn't. I see. So there's a somewhere here in your Bible, there's this line, this dark line, this bold, Sharpie line, somewhere between verse 40 and the end of verse 43. Somewhere you put a gap in. Is that what I'm hearing, Bill? And how do you know where to put the gap? Huh? I appreciate that. So there's a gap, but how do you know where to put the gap in the text? Does the gap come between the legs and the feet? Does the gap come in the middle of the feet? Does the gap come somewhere? There's a gap. I think that seems reasonable, especially as we read the rest of Daniel. Go ahead, Mike. Yes. Yeah, and marriage. Yeah, I should have looked to see what that word was. Yeah, sorry. It's Aramaic. I hardly can read my Hebrew text, let alone Aramaic. Bill, you had a hand? Yeah.
I think through history you see such a variety of ruling nations
Okay.
coming, going. Don't seem to have any one town order like these others did.
Okay.
And of course we live in it, but then thinking of the whole image, that's the last thing that's going to happen.
Yes.
And then it's going to get crushed. And we know that
The crusher is going to come. That's what Bill's saying.
thus we can probably conclude that we are living in a time period of history that includes that.
If you were a historicist in that you think all of this has to be somehow historically fulfilled, you might look at the tail end of Rome. You know, Rome, which starts out very strong, but by the end of the Roman Empire becomes a hodgepodge of strength and weakness. And eventually the Goths are going to come in and just take over the southern part of Europe. So you could think that. But we're going to quickly come to a stone that's going to crush this image by hitting the feet of iron and clay. So somewhere, Bill, I think you're right. We've got to make that jump. Where that jump happens is maybe a matter of interpretation about where you want to stick in a gap. It's like reading Daniel chapter 9. Daniel 9 has 70 weeks, 77s have been set out for your people. And everybody that I read puts a gap in there somewhere. Either it's a gap in the middle of the 70th week, like I would want to do, or it's a gap between the 69th and 70th weeks, like Pastor Holmes would want to do. There's a gap. No matter who you are, there's a gap there because we've got this long interstitial period, this period between that event and that event. There's this fuzziness that we seem to be in. Go again, Richard. Yep. Yep. Yes. 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 And it'll continue to happen, not just in ancient Europe, but it continues to happen in 19th, 20th century Europe, right? Thank you. Go ahead, Bill. See, here you are reading ahead. I says, sooner or later, we're going to find a lot of this confirmed in Daniel chapter 7. Just read me verse 24 because I'm standing here walking around. You got verse 24 in front of you? Read it for me. So you've picked up on this 10 thing, haven't you? You've picked up on the 10 thing. 10 toes, 10 horns. And so we find ourselves doing this as we compare Daniel 2, the vision in Daniel 2, to the vision in Daniel 7. That'll be easier for us to do when we get to Daniel 7, won't it? It'll be easier to make that connection because we will have seen Daniel 2 in recent memory, which is the only kind of memory I have anymore, and Daniel 7. Bill? Yeah? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, not surprising. God did. Paul says that the Lord revealed mysteries to me about the church. Yeah, obviously. So it seems, I'm just sort of peeling off from what Bill said. We've got this series of kingdoms. I'll go this way because it's the right order for you. The series of kingdoms, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome. And then we have this gap. And eventually we come to these 10 toes or 10 horns. And that seems to us, at least based on what we see in history, to be primarily future-oriented. So we've got to assume that there's this thing between the Roman Empire and what is going to be yet future, because the stone's going to roll along here in just a moment. Charlene? Yeah. Well, it's all about how you interpret it. If you're looking for a revived Roman Empire, because after all, there's iron in the feet, right? Iron and clay. So you're looking for a revived yet somewhat different Roman Empire, okay? Or maybe you saw the European Union start to come together, right? Yeah, you're smiling. I appreciate that. And as soon as the number of nations in the European Union gets to 10, that's it. Well, maybe not. So just be careful about those kinds of, it's easy for us to look back in history and see Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome. It's much more difficult for us to look down the road with certainty, at least for me. There are guys who can do that. I don't know that you can trust what they say, but there are guys that do that. So just be cautious about hard interpretations about what's yet to come. It's a theory. It's a theory. I don't know, Charlene. How's that? Can I leave it at that? I could speculate. I want to instead look at the stone before we get done today. Verse 44. Here's the last piece of Nebuchadnezzar's image was this stone. And here's Daniel's explanation about this stone that rolls along. Verse 44. In the days of those kings, I don't know what that means. In the days of the feet of iron and clay, perhaps? In the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that shall never be destroyed, nor shall the kingdom be left to another people. That is that kingdom, shall break in pieces all these kingdoms and bring them to an end. What is it that breaks all these kingdoms to pieces? The stone, right? The stone that rolls along, a stone not cut with human hands, which Bill and John said was Jesus. Yes. It shall stand forever, just, verse 45, as you saw that a stone was cut from a mountain by no human hand, and that it broke in pieces the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold. A great God has made known to the king what shall be after this. The dream is certain, and its interpretation sure. What does the stone represent? Jesus Christ, who came historically 4 BC or something like that, and indeed, through his death on the cross, put to an end all rival kingdoms. But there will come a day yet in our future, will there not, when he will establish a kingdom that will not have an end. It seems to me that the stone business is maybe yet part of what we're looking forward to when Christ establishes his kingdom, I think. Is this true? God has clearly demonstrated that he controls world empires. Can I look with you at 2 Old Testament passages briefly? Psalm chapter 2. Psalm 2, just 2 that illustrate this beautifully. Psalm 2. It's the psalm that starts out, "Why do the nations rage and the peoples plot in vain?" When you get to verse 4, the statement I made was, God has clearly demonstrated that he controls world empires. This is Psalm 2, verse 4. He who sits in the heavens laughs. The Lord holds them in derision. Then he will speak to them in his wrath and terrify them in his fury, saying, as for me, I have set my king on Zion, my holy hill. Does God not demonstrate that he controls world empires? He sets them up, he takes them down. One other passage in Isaiah chapter 41. I've come to really enjoy these chapters, like 40 to 45 or so in Isaiah, because they speak so profoundly of God's sovereignty. I'm in Isaiah chapter 41 and I'll begin in verse 21. Isaiah 41, 21. Verse 21 says, set forth your case, says Yahweh. Bring your proofs, says the King of Jacob. Let them bring them and tell us what is to happen. Tell us the former things, what they are, that we may consider them, that we may know their outcome, or declare to us the things to come. Tell us what is to come hereafter, that we may know that you are gods. Do good, do harm, whatever, that we may be dismayed and terrified. Behold, you are nothing, and your work is less than nothing. An abomination is the one who chooses you. Talking about these idol gods. Go ahead, idol god. Tell us what's going to happen in the future. Ain't going to happen because they can't. Who can? The God who demonstrates clearly that he sets up world empires and takes them down. Controls world empires. Does that include what's going on today in Ukraine? Yes. You and I look at Vladimir Putin. We admire his strength, but we are aghast at his morality, at what he believes is good and bad, right and wrong. Has he been placed there by God? Yes. Is God in charge of when he falls? Yes. If God really is demonstrating that he controls world empires, does it make any sense for us to live as if we are in charge of our own lives? Stop it. Stop that. Stop acting that way. We'll be in Daniel chapter 3 next week, seeing 3 young men in a world of trouble on their way to a fiery furnace. Look forward to that. Thank you.